Good morning, Sean. You said of Bo after the Houston game,
Morning.
like, we've got to keep working with his clock because it can get quick. And I'm just curious, what is the process that goes into trying to slow that down? And is it a fine line given how much his clock helps him avoid the trouble in terms of sacks?
Well, I think it's a plus and a minus. I've said that before. I think one of his great strengths um, is not taking sacks, and so the clock in his head relative to that sense of urgency. I think there is a fine line of number one, the depth of route. Is this a longer developing play, a 7-step drop, a 5-step drop, a 3-step drop, and what should be the appropriate time. But I think that's a much easier problem to correct than the latter, which is taking the sacks. And historically speaking, it's proven to be much more difficult to fix.
Thank you.
Parker Gabriel, The Denver Post.
Yeah, hey Sean, I guess maybe on a similar track. I'm curious how much you balance the sort of obviously it's a game plan driven in season with particularly the quarterback. How much fundamental work, how much sort of drill work do you get in a typical week? Obviously not just with Bo, but with the guys in that room.
Yeah, I think Davis does a great job. There's times where uh, during portions of practice that they'll work specifically on, left off a 3-step, left off a 5, right off a 3, right off a 5, um, route specific. Um, but look, the challenge the other night, and especially when you look at the tape, there were a number of things that we've got to do better. We collectively as coaches, and we will. I'm glad we got the win. I just finished talking to our team about it. That was a big win for us to get to 8, and obviously we recognize, all right, here are the things we got to continue to work on to improve.
Zach Stevens, DNVR.
Hey, Coach, after the game, you also mentioned penalties and that being an issue for the offensive side. This far into the season, how difficult is that to correct, and how do you go about correcting that specifically on
I
offense?
I I think you can correct that, and we plan on it. I think, look, there's one or two a game that get called. You look at, and I'm like, yeah, I don't agree with that. But that being said, there's a sum total, and certainly it has to be a point of emphasis.
Eric Dalala, DenverBroncos.com.
Yeah, hey coach. Obviously a long stretch there, the first 10 weeks of the season. Just wondering how valuable this mini bye, if you will, can be for the team to gear up for a big one against Kansas City.
Yeah, look, I think the schedule comes out. You play them when you play them. I felt when the schedule came out, the challenge would be the Monday night Cincinnati short week Eastern time zone Philly game, and obviously Philly being a real good opponent. Um, and to get through that stretch, I was just having this conversation earlier. It's amazing how quickly it feels like this stretch of 6-7 weeks have gone by, and you're just you get in a routine. So having this mini weekend, especially with Kansas City coming off a bye, look, it'll be an important game. Obviously, it's a divisional game, and we'll be ready to go.
Andrew Mason, 104.3 The Fan. We'll skip Andrew and go to Mike Kliss, 9 News.
Yes, Sean, I was just wondering, after digesting the rough first half that Crawshaw had, um, anything that you can attribute to that, and anything you can do.
Well, I think we talked about it after the game. I think the biggest challenge sometimes, it's not the ball hitting your foot, it's the drop. And the wind picked up a little bit more. I'm sure it was a little breezier than he's punted in those type of conditions. And so when you watch those guys when they're by themselves, all they do is drop the ball, drop. to try to, find a consistent, and when it moves, when it hits your shin, then obviously that's a problem. So I think it's one of those tough lessons learned. He's got the ability to kick a different style punt if he ever felt it was windier, which would be a more end over end, less drop driven punt. But yeah, I think that it was crystal clear what was happening.
Arnie Stapleton, Associated Press.
I'm sorry, my question was already asked. Thanks, Emma.
Great. Thank you, Arnie, and thank you, Coach. That appears to be all the questions we have for you today.
Perfect. Thank you.